On to leaders' questions. Call on Deputy Michael McGrath.
Thank you very much, Ciaran Corla. Tánaiste, the members of the Public Accounts Committee are to be commended, in my view, for the manner in which they conducted yesterday's hearing with the Central Remedial Clinic. Some of the practices that were revealed during yesterday's hearing are completely unacceptable. The use of charitable donations to top up lavish executive salaries and pension payouts, the highly irregular recruitment process for the CEO, a mystery annual payment of €660,000 to the Mater Hospital. But the saddest part of all this, Tánaiste, is that the children and adults with physical disabilities who rely on the services of the CRC will potentially suffer as public donations inevitably fall off. And there is also now a growing concern that public trust and confidence in charities generally will be negatively affected by this controversy. If we want people to continue to support charities as generously as they always have done in this country, then they need to be assured that their hard-earned money is going to be spent on those for whom it is intended. We would be naive, Tánaiste, to think that the issues at the CRC pertain only to that organisation and that it is the only publicly funded body to operate in this manner. The Minister for Health said late last month that of the 44 so-called Section 38 bodies contacted by the HSE, over half, 24 of them, said they do not comply with public sector pay policy. Another 8 didn't even bother to reply to the HSE. And Tánaiste, what about the 2,000 or so Section 39 bodies that also receive substantial amounts of funding from the HSE? Do we really know what is going on within these organisations? We are still awaiting the implementation of the Charities Act of 2009. This Act expressly provides for the Minister for Justice to regulate for narrative and financial disclosure standards. Were these standards enforced, Tánaiste, they would require every charity of any significant scale to provide a report on the sources of their revenues, the pay bands of their highest paid employees, the costs of their governance and the specific uses to which they put income and assets. Can you advise the House when this legislation will be enacted? And in the meantime, will you ensure that the Statement of Recommended Practice for Charities, which is mandatory in England, Wales and Scotland, becomes mandatory in Ireland for the largest organisations that are funded by the HSE?
Thank you, Deputy. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, can I say that I agree with Deputy McGrath that it is important that public confidence is retained and renewed in charitable organisations. That people who are contributing to charities can have confidence that their contributions are going for the purposes for which they are donating it. In other words, that they're going to the frontline services. And that is why the measures that are now being taken to deal with the issues of top-up payments and transparency in the Section 38 organisations is so important. The bottom line is that the agencies and organisations which are substantially funded from the public purse should adhere to stated pay policy. The chairman and members of the board of the CRC, the former CEO of the CRC, appeared before the Public Accounts Committee yesterday, together with the HSE and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. On foot of calls for the board of the CRC to resign, the chairman indicated that he would be calling a meeting of the board to consider their position. Regrettably, the former CEO of the CRC, who resigned this week, decided not to attend the Public Accounts Committee hearing. The HSE will be following up urgently on the governance deficits identified in the CRC and the issues that arose in regard to pension arrangements. I understand that arising from the PAC hearing yesterday, the HSE has now been asked to appear again before the Public Accounts Committee on Thursday, the 19th of December, together with representatives from the Mater Hospital, which has a role in relation to superannuation arrangements in the CRC. Officials from the Department of Health and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform will also attend at that committee hearing. In relation to the general subject of top-up payments in Section 38 agencies, the HSE has a team of senior managers following up with individual agencies in relation to non-compliance with public pay policy. The reason these breaches of policy came to light in the first place was on foot of an audit of the Section 38 agencies. As part of this process, the Director General of the HSE is meeting the chairpersons of all Section 38 organisations today. This meeting will focus on the requirement of the board of each agency to further strengthen governance standards and will set out the need to furnish the HSE with a compliance statement from the current financial year and for each year thereafter. This statement will, on an annual basis, require to be approved by the board of each agency, signed by the chairman and another director on behalf of the board, and submitted to the HSE together with the organisation's annual audited accounts. This annual compliance statement will be required in addition to the annual service agreement between the agency and the HSE. Further and separate meetings are being held by senior HSE managers with all of the disability organisations and hospitals concerned the week commencing the 16th of December to ensure that appropriate steps are taken to bring these organisations into compliance with public pay policy and that any governance deficits are rectified immediately. And you asked me specifically in relation to the commencement of the Charities Act. I understand that it's intended to commence that early in the new year.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Deputy McGrath.
Yeah, thank you, Tánaiste, for your reply. And I think the key issue here, Tánaiste, is the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, the inevitable consequence on public trust and confidence in charities around the country. And it is inevitable that donations are going to fall off, and the people who will suffer, those who will bear the brunt, are those who rely on the services. And that is the sad part about what is going to unfold at the CRC, and hopefully other issues will not emerge of a comparable nature in other organisations, but that could well be the case. We know that the HSE, in their internal audit report going back to March of this year, identified these issues. It is scandalous that 24 of the 44 Section 38 organisations have openly admitted to the HSE that they are not in compliance with public sector pay policy. That position is completely untenable, and I want to know specifically what the HSE is going to do about that in terms of signing up to new service level agreements with those organisations. What is the ultimate power that the HSE has at its disposal and is prepared to use to ensure that all of those organisations fully comply with the public pay policy? I welcome your commitment on the Charities Act, Minister. In November 2011, Minister Shatter said at that time that the government was postponing the establishment of a charities regulator on budgetary grounds. And that was the wrong decision. And we are now seeing some of the fallout from the lack of standards that are applying across the 8,000 charities in this country. And I hope that that regulator and all of the associated provisions in terms of financial disclosures and standards can be put in place without any further delay.
Well, I think the first thing that I want to deal with is the issue of public confidence in charities. And I think that it needs to be made very clear to people who contribute to charities or people who are contemplating contributing to charities that the Act is being cleaned up here, that the problems that were identified in relation to top-ups or excessive payments, or call it what you want to have it, to senior management staff and senior executives in charitable organisations, that problem is being dealt with. And it is being dealt with at the initiative of the Minister for Health, who asked the HSE to conduct an audit of these organisations following on from the HICWA report in Tallaght Hospital in 2012. It is that audit of the Section 38 agencies that has identified what the problems are and that has brought to light the various top-up payments and pension arrangements and all of the other matters that have come into the public domain. That audit is now being followed up by meetings which are being conducted by senior managers from the HSE with the agencies concerned. The Chief Executive Officer of the HSE is meeting with the chairpersons of the Section 38 agencies in order to make it clear to them what is expected of them in respect of compliance with public pay policy. And as I stated earlier, the mechanism that it is intended to use is to require each of the Section 38 agencies to sign a compliance statement. In other words, that the chairman of the board of each of these agencies and another director of the board will have to sign a compliance statement that will be submitted to the HSE, making it clear that those agencies are complying with public pay policy and that therefore the public can have confidence that when they donate their money, that they know where their money is going and that there is transparency in relation to the administration and the management and the payment of senior executives in these organisations.
Deputy McDonald.
Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, I think we all agree that yesterday's testimony to the Public Accounts Committee by former and current members of the board of the Central Remedial Clinic was both shocking in content and very arrogant in its delivery. And we now have it that in addition to paying pay top-ups to senior executives, there are also gold-plated retirement packages being doled out and appointments being made in open defiance of HSE guidelines. Now, I have to say, as somebody who sits on that committee, as matters unfolded, I was minded of Miles Nagopoline, because you literally couldn't have made up the story that we were told. And perhaps, Tánaiste, that you and your colleagues in government are nearly breathing a sigh of relief now, because the CRC being at the eye of the storm sort of takes the eye off you, and in particular off the Minister for Health and his shambolic stewardship of that portfolio. I caught sight of Minister James Riley on the television commenting on this matter, and it struck me that he looked like a disinterested observer, somebody who'd been vox-popped out Christmas shopping. The truth is that these top-ups in the CRC have been known about by the system since 2009. By the way, Fianna Fáil were in charge then. Let's remember that. The fact is that senior HSE management were ignored. They were virtually told to get lost by the board of the CRC. The fact is, notwithstanding the audit carried out in March of this year, we now in December don't know the full extent of the top-ups in the system and other breaches. So, Tánaiste, while it is very commendable of you to recognise the work of the Public Accounts Committee, it's not enough. Because bear in mind, you, and in particular the Minister for Health, are the people in charge. So I want to know what precisely you and government intend to do to bring full clarity on this matter, to end the practices that have, some of which have been uncovered. Because it's only by doing that, Tánaiste, by taking charge of the situation, that you have any hope of re-establishing that confidence in charities of which you speak.
Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, we have already taken charge of it. In 2012, in May of 2012, HICWA published a report on the governance of Tallaght Hospital. And it emerged from that report that an employee in that hospital was receiving additional payments since 2005. Now, on foot of that report, the Minister for Health asked the HSE to do an audit of all of the Section 38 agencies. And because that audit was done, what they did was they went out to each of the agencies and asked them to come back, say what was being paid, what additional payments, were there additional payments being paid, what was the nature of them, what was the basis for them, and so on. And you know, well, you say now you're aware of it, but it wasn't clear from your question that you were aware of it, so let me explain it to you. As a result of that, each of the agencies were asked to come back. Some came back very quickly, showing that they were complying. Some came back showing that they weren't complying, and some others they had to be followed. They had to be followed through. But that is an exercise that the HSE has conducted at the direction of the Minister for Health. That process is now coming to a conclusion. We have the information that has been submitted by the different agencies. It is being followed through. There are now 17 senior managers of the HSE who are pursuing this with the various agencies concerned to drill down into what payments are being made, what is the nature of them, and so on. The Chief Executive Officer of the HSE is meeting with the chairpersons of each of the Section 38 agencies, firstly to clarify all of the facts, and secondly to make it absolutely clear to them what is expected of them in terms of pay policy. There is going to be transparency here. There is going to be compliance with public pay policy, and that is going to be structured in a way that each of these agencies will be required to sign a compliance statement each year. Each year they'll have to sign this compliance statement. That compliance statement will be part and parcel of the arrangements. It will be separate to the service agreement that they have to sign with the HSE in any event. And clearly, and you asked the question of what is the recourse that's open to the HSE if they're not compliant. Well, you know, if an agency can't sign the compliance agreement, there are consequences in terms of the portions of public funding that go to the payment of salaries, and certainly go to the payment of any of these top-up arrangements. So there are options that will be open to the HSE, but it will centre on the compliance statement being signed by each of the agencies. So this is a matter on which government has already taken action. The information that is now in the public domain is as a result of the audit that was conducted by the HSE. It is being followed through by the HSE management, by the Minister for Health, and I'm glad that it is also being dealt with by the Public Accounts.
Thank you. Deputy McDonald.
If you'd followed yesterday's meeting, you would know that at the tail end of the exchange with the PAC, the information in respect of the payments to the Mater Hospital were unearthed. You might have noticed also, if you were tuned in, that the HSE knew absolutely nothing whatsoever about that. The top HR person in the HSE was left dumbfounded by that revelation. Not alone was he unaware of that relationship between the CRC and the Mater in respect of pensions, he couldn't tell the meeting whether or not there were other Section 38 organisations with a similar arrangement. Now, that's the level of attention that has been paid in real terms to the detail and the proper governance of the £1.6 billion that goes annually to Section 38 organisations. And you have not been sure-footed on this matter. The HICWA report happened in May 2012. The audit happens almost a year later in March 2013. We're now in December 2013. And all the time, your government seeks to put at arm's length through HICWA, through the HSE, the sole responsibility for dealing with these issues. And that is not good enough. And it leads me to suspect that perhaps there is an ambivalence on your part in respect of top-up payment.
Deputy, you're over time. Thank you.
Your own record isn't terribly good on that matter. So I put it to you again. What will you directly do? What will the Minister directly do to ensure that nobody in the HSE can be told to get lost by any Section 38 organisation?
Thank you. Honest.
Well, you were hard enough to find last week yourself, Deputy McDonald, to be vox-popped on matters that I think there might have been some public interest in. I think it is interesting. I think this exchange this morning is quite interesting. There used to be a time when the opposition would come in here and would raise issues with government of things that government was not doing. This must be extraordinary that we now have the opposition, and certainly this deputy in particular, who is in here complaining about things that the government is doing. Let's be clear about this. The issue of the top-up payments, the issue of the top-up payments in the Section 38 agencies is something that government has already dealt with and is dealing with. In respect of the issue of the Mater Hospital, I understand that the representatives of the Mater Hospital, which has a role in relation to superannuation arrangements with the CRC, are due to appear before the Public Accounts Committee on the 19th of December. In respect of the, well, it was the HSE.
Sorry,
let's be clear on this.
There's a time limit here. Thank you.
It is the HSE that has conducted the audit here. It was the HSE that established that the top-up payments were being paid in the first place, and that was done because the Minister for Health asked them to do it. And there is a determination on the part of government, on the part of the Minister for Health, to ensure that, first of all, there is going to be transparency on these payments so that the public who contribute to charities can have confidence that their money is going where it is supposed to be going. And secondly, that the agencies concerned will comply with public pay policy, and there is a means by which that will be done, and that will be that each of these agencies will be required each year to sign a compliance statement, and that will be part of whatever arrangement as these agencies have with the HSE for their continued funding.
Thank you. Deputy Donnelly.
Thank you, Corla. Tánaiste, this morning I received a letter from 66 pensioners in Carnew, County Wicklow, and they were writing to express their outrage at the scrapping of the telephone rental allowance. As a result, many are being forced to cancel their landlines, and what they're saying is not only will this cut them off from friends and family, but it will also cut them off from their community-based alarm system. Benny Conaghan said the following, Tánaiste: "They shouldn't have taken it from us in the first place because it means so much to us with no family. We rely on it for emergency response." Lil Kilbride said, "I'm very annoyed over the telephone cuts. I only have a certain amount to live on. I've had a stroke, making it hard to use a mobile phone." Pat Shepherd said, "I'm upset and angry. The pension is small enough to live on. It annoys me immensely to hear them say they haven't touched the pension, but there are so many other things like the prescription charges and increase in fuel." Unfortunately, Tánaiste, we don't know what the total impact of the budget is on Mr Shepherd.
Please.
We don't know, Tánaiste, the total impact of the budget on Mr Shepherd or the other pensioners. Before the budget was introduced in Leaders' Questions, I asked you to let Dall know how the burden of the budget was going to be distributed across our society, and you refused. But now we know. This morning, 1 week after the finance bill was voted through by this government, the ESRI has presented that analysis. So here's what's happened in Budget 2014.
We haven't time now for the whole budget.
The poorest 10% of people in the country are being asked to give up the most. The next poorest 10% in the country are being asked to give up the next amount. And if you look at 80% of the population, you see a correlation between how poor you are and how much Budget 2014 takes off you. Now, we all know, Tánaiste, the budget has to be closed, but it doesn't have to be closed like this. I bet you couldn't find a single Fine Gael or Labour TD willing to go on television and defend and explain why it is right and proper that the poorest people in this country are being asked to give up the most in this budget.
A question, please. Thank you.
That's exactly, however, that's exactly, Tánaiste, what this budget does and what this government has done through the Social Welfare Bill and the Finance Bill. So my question, Tánaiste, to you is this. When you ordered Labour TDs last week to vote through the Finance Bill, did you know that you were asking them to vote for something that was going to take the most amount from the poorest people in this country?
Thank you. Tánaiste, would you please stay quiet in the back benches? Thanks very much. This is between the Tánaiste and the questioner. And we don't need your help either. I appreciate your assistance I must put you on the panel of chairmen if you're interested. Thank you.
Well, first of all,
a sweet or something, would you?
First of all, the ESRI published 2 reports yesterday, Deputy Donnelly. You've only referred to one of them. They published a report on which they do each year, on the distributional, what they call the distributional impact of the budget measures, based on a model that they call the switch model. But they also published a second report, which was looking at the impact of social transfers on people at risk of poverty. In respect of the report in relation to the distributional analysis, the ESRI itself acknowledges that they are having difficulties with the switch model. They are, I acknowledge, making some progress in expanding the coverage of that model. But as they accept themselves in the report, they are still experiencing difficulties in incorporating all of the budget measures within their model, particularly in assessing the impact on higher incomes. The ESRI has acknowledged that the model exaggerates the scale of the actual losses in the budget as it assumes more income is taxed and welfare payments fall behind average incomes. Now, nobody doubts, however, that all of the budgets that have had to be introduced in recent years have had a serious impact on the incomes of people right across the country. But despite those difficulties, we have managed to maintain core social welfare rates. There have been no cuts in the old age pension. We have not increased taxes on working people. We managed to take 330,000 people out of the universal social charge. We reversed the cut in the minimum wage, and in this year's budget we're providing free GP care to children who are aged under 6. In respect of the second report that was published by the ESRI, which looks, as I said, at the impact of social transfers in reducing the risk at poverty, the findings of that report are unambiguous. Social transfers, including pensions, have reduced the at-risk of poverty rate by 71%. In other words, 7 out of every 10 people in our society would be at increased risk of poverty without the redistribution that is provided for by the social protection system in this country. It shows also that Ireland is at the top end of the range of EU 15 countries in the effectiveness of social transfers in reducing poverty, and that the welfare system is playing a pivotal role in alleviating poverty in Ireland. Now, as I said, nobody doubts, nobody is trying to argue that there is any sugarcoating that can be put on the measures that have had to be adopted in the budgets. But the main issue is that we have now reached a point where we know that the approach that the government is taking is working. We are now seeing an economy where jobs are being created again. It is that creation of employment and that growth in the economy that will generate the revenues that will enable us to ensure that people can have hope of a better future and will enable us to begin to look at the areas where improvements can be made again.
Thank you. Deputy Donnelly, 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Tánaiste, you say it's working. Who's it working for? Because it's not working for the poorest people in the country. What you are espousing is old-fashioned, Thatcherite, Reagan economics. It says, take care of the rich and the benefits will trickle down. Now, you can question...
Sorry. Would you settle down, please? Deputy. Deputy, would you resume your seat for a minute? Thanks. Listen, you're wasting your time shouting because nobody can hear because there's so many people shouting. Would you allow him to put his question? He's 1 minute to do it. Thank you. And we don't, again, Deputy McGrath, I appreciate your help, but I don't really need it.
It seems, Tánaiste, that we've hit on a sensitive issue, because the analysis is unambiguous. And of course there are always errors in analysis, but the ESRI analysis is the best we have. I discussed it with him this morning on the phone, and it is solid. And it says unambiguously, this government in Budget 2014 is asking the poorest people in the country to take the greatest share of the correction. That is a fact. That is what you're doing. And it is a disgrace.
Question, please. Thank you.
It's bad social policy, it's bad economic policy, and it leads to a rise of inequality. And inequality is bad for everybody. And you have all people know that. But that is what you are doing. So the question is, why is it happening? Why is the Dáil, why are Labour TDs voting through a budget that hits the poorest hardest? Now, I believe that part of the reason is because none of us know what we're voting for because we don't have the analysis when we vote. Now, maybe I'm being naive, but I believe that if the TDs in your party, who I have great respect for, had the analysis at the time of the vote and before the vote that we have today, they would have demanded changes to what they had to vote for. And that is why the analysis is so important. So, Tánaiste, I'm missing my kids' Christmas play to be here to ask you this question. So do me a favour. Do me a favour, thank you. Do me a favour. and answer the question.
Thank you. I'll get you back. I'll get you back to your Christmas party quicker if you sit down. Thank you.
Is it the end of the shoemaker?
Sorry, Deputy. You don't understand. There's a time limit. Will you listen to me? You're way over time.
Did you know that that bill was going to take the most from the poorest in the country? That's the question.
Well, I'm sorry you're missing your children's Christmas play. But can I predict what you won't miss? I think you will not miss the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party away day in 2015 before the general election. Because I predict, Deputy Donnelly, Deputy Donnelly, that is where you are heading, and that you will be. I predict that you will be wearing the Fianna Fáil jersey at the next general election. And between now and then, you will do Fianna Fáil's work for them by coming in here. I am an independent, and I am quoting a very worthwhile independent document in order to criticise the government. So here's the answer for you, Deputy Donnelly. Here's the answer for you, Deputy Donnelly. The party that I believe that you will be a candidate for in the next general election, cut social welfare rates, cut the minimum wage, put low-paid people into the universal social charge. This is the government that has taken low-paid people out of the universal social charge, reversed the cut in the minimum wage, reinstated the joint labour committees, and protected people on core social welfare rates.
That completes leaders' questions for today. We now move on to the... Sorry.